Hey, my name is Castillo, and this video is about how you can reprogram your mind to win at both life and business. I know how to do this because, as my clients typically joke, I already lived like 2 or 3 lives at my 36-year-old that I'm currently at. I'm going to show you exactly what I've done until now, how I reprogram myself every step of the way, and then finally give you a proven subconscious reprogramming protocol that is guaranteed to help you succeed if you consistently apply it. This is the same stuff that we teach our clients in order to maximize their mental performance, and it will work for you if you're currently, burnout, overwhelmed, dealing with emotional dysregulations, you have anxiety, you have frequent mood swings, you have self-doubt, negativity, that you're starting to believe that maybe you're not ready to scale your business. Listen, there's a way out of this, and I'm going to show you exactly what it is. And I first start by telling you how I have been using it throughout my life in order to achieve things that are not typical. Before we start, I'm Castillo, founder of Selfmastered.com, which is the leading performance institute for entrepreneurs. We help you scale fast with systems and protocols that guarantee peak focus, clarity, discipline, and self-belief. And this is my story. So I first became an entrepreneur when I was 31. But until then, I was all sorts of things. I was a private real estate director. I was a consultant. At first, I was an architect. I also was involved in youth politics. I was a leading youth representative of the second largest political party. I've done all sorts of things. And at each step of the way, I have had to follow the same mental reprogramming protocol that I'm going to share with you. At age 18, I made a mistake, which is deciding to become an architect. I call this a mistake because architecture is a notoriously hard industry to thrive in. It's subject to a lot of chaotic and a lot of regulation. And in Spain, it saw a 98% destruction in employment in the 2008 crisis. So in essence, I was the worst choice I could make to secure a future here in Spain, right? But it took me 4 years until I was 22 to realize that I had messed up badly. So at 22, I realized that I need to do all the things outside of just being an architect in order to secure a good future. Now, bear in mind that architecture back then in Spain, the average time a student will spend to finalize its career, with the master included, was 9 years, 9.2 years, I believe, right? I did it in 7.5 years, right? So it was also grueling, hard work. It forces you to do all sorts of things, build models, design, all sorts of a very wide variety of skill sets applied to a career that was notoriously hard. So at 22, I decided I needed a change. And that change had to go with exploring other options, exploring other avenues that I believe my skills could shine. So I became a biz developer in China. How does that happen? Well, I went to China on a trip with my friends, and I realized the huge potential China had for business. And I committed on learning Chinese, and I bought a one-way flight ticket in one summer to spend time with a Chinese family who didn't know me, who didn't speak any Spanish or English whatsoever. I didn't speak English that well back then, in order to learn Chinese the fast way. And it worked very well. My speaking skills were off the charts. I never really learned to write, to be honest. I never really knew how to do the kanji thing. But I was very good at speaking. So I would link up with architectural bureaus in China and help them sell more, help them contact and connect and be in meetings with local providers, people that had the needed architectural services, all sorts of meetings working for and with Chinese architectural bureaus. So I represented Spanish interests, and I was at the table with either other Chinese bureaus, or I was with the local political authorities that needed, because everything there is political, as you might imagine, that needed some sort of architectural service. At some point, I even worked for a Chinese bureau, right? So I was the only foreigner that had ever worked at that architectural bureau. That was very tough. That was mentally tough because, all 24/7 speaking Chinese is very taxing for the brain. But anyway, this is the first thing I did. Then I became an author, and an author in a very reputable cultural magazine in Spain, arguably the most important in Spain, and then the most important in Peru. How did that happen? I just emailed them. I did cold outreach, send them an email, say, hey, here's an article that I just wrote that I think fits your cultural kind of line. Let me know if this is approved. And they loved it. And I started consistently writing at Jordão magazine, and then in Spain, and then Casas. And what's cool about this is that I went around interviewing very famous entrepreneurs, people that were really ahead in the game, like Alberto Campoesa, like Ricardo Bofill, all sorts of people that were very important in Spanish architecture. But at the same time, I also became a photographer. So I started taking pictures because I really always loved photography. And I went to Brasilia in Brazil and in China, and I did all sorts of architectural pics that then I would have some exhibitions under my name, right? And this is in those 3 years because I realized that I couldn't be an architect. It was too hard for me. Then at 25, I graduate. I'm still broke, right? And I realized that maybe the cultural life is not as stable as I thought it was. It's very interesting to me, but it's not the thing that I believe I can build a career. So I decided to go on my second master's in business at IE Business School in order to start in the finance sector. I continued being an author journalist, and here's when I started getting involved in politics. The party does not exist anymore, but it was like the Lib Dems in Spain. It was very popular at one point in Spain. It was even the second largest force, I believe, at one time, or the third. And I was its youth representative. I literally was chosen to represent the youth of that party. And I went many times to the Congress of Parliament, to the Parliament, to help our representatives at Parliament better discuss real estate initiatives and in finance and all this stuff. So I became first a youth representative, and then I became someone who was advising basically our members of Parliament. Then it took me 2 years to finally find a job in something that was not culture or architecture related, and I became a real estate consultant at Deloitte. Deloitte is one of the top big consulting firms, and I realized that I had to really move very quickly because I was 27, everybody around me was 22, right? So even one of my bosses was like 25. It's like, what? No. We need to improve. And this is when I first started with peak performance. This is a moment in which I realized that I had to be the absolute most elite version of myself if I wanted to win. And around the age 28, I bought my way into a local venture capital fund, and we started putting money with already business, right? But I helped them operationalize everything and be more effective. And I was still involved in politics. And at this point, I wasn't a youth representative, but I'm mostly like a member of Parliament assessor. And then at 29, I became a private equity director. How did that happen? Well, part luck, a lot of hard work, a lot of performance, and a lot of fast learning. And for 2 funds, I continued to be an investor, continued to be in politics. And then at 31, I realized that life was too short to follow someone else's order. I didn't like authority. And honestly, I had already seen what the top of the private equity real estate investment kind of looked like, right? People take 15 years to get here. I got here in 30 months. And I knew what, presenting to an investment committee looked like. I knew what analyzing a real estate looked like. I had a very good understanding of the whole process, and it wasn't for me. And I decided that I could add more value if I would bridge what I'd learned as an investor, and I was learned by maximizing my performance to become an entrepreneur, right? And this is when I started my first official business. I have already been toying with business in the past. I'm still an investor. And then at some point, I got a call for IE, the same school where I did my master's, that they needed someone who had been in finance, was an architect, and understood business. And basically, that's literally me at this point. So I started being the academic coordinator, which is basically you manage professors. You make sure that the classes are running smoothly and everybody is following the syllabus that they have created, with the added complexity that pretty much 50% of my professors here were CEOs of listed companies in Spain. So you have to master people that are 30 years your senior and 100 times your net worth, right? And the egos tend to be very big. Fantastic people, don't get me wrong. I had a lot of fun, and it was really, really a great experience. And then when it was 34, I decided that this was taking a lot of my time, and I decided to just remain as a professor at the same masters. I continue being an investor, and I continue being an entrepreneur. So master has helped more than 300 clients, and I don't know how many customers now, 600, 700, I don't know. So this is my story. And at each step of the way, I have had to reinvent myself. I have had to reprogram my mind to be effective. I have learned to consistently adapt my identity and my mindset and my behavior to go from student to biz dev to author to photographer to being in politics, which is very hard to learn how to manage yourself successfully and understand the political game. Then a consultant, very successful consultant, then private equity director, very successful, got a couple of awards here, then investor. All sorts of things that have forced me to reinvent myself. And personal reinvention is based on mental reprogramming. And this is what we are going to be discussing today. Cool? All right. I'm excited for this because this is very, very important, right? If you learn how to do this, there's no limits to what you can accomplish. Like, I never thought I was going to build Selfmastered in English. Remember that I'm Spanish national. My English level wasn't as good as you think as it is now. All right, so this is my trajectory. What does this mean to you and how you can do the same? Before I tell you, you got to understand what the mind is, right? So the mind is an operating system. That is reality. This is what happens. And your mindset is nothing else than a mental lens. It is the combination of your conscious, I'm being schematic, of course, right? Conscious side of the mind, which is basically nested here in the prefrontal cortex, and the subconscious, which is a function of the limbic system. Of course, I'm being schematic, but roughly this is how it's worked. Throughout all of your life, especially since you were from 1 to 7 years old, you program your subconscious based on the experiences you had as a kid, and then that is what illuminates later on how the prefrontal cortex makes conscious decisions. And every performance problem basically is a misalignment between what you consciously want to achieve and what you subconsciously believe you're able to achieve. There is a clash between the conscious and the subconscious side. And a measure of how well aligned your conscious and the subconscious are is your mindset. And according to Carol Dweck, who wrote a very important book on this called Mindset, there's basically two types of mindset: growth and fixed. Roughly speaking, you have a growth mindset when you are kind of positive, when you believe failure is feedback, when you're resilient, when you believe there are no limits. And your fixed mindset when you are typically negative, feedback is a threat. You're not resilient. So you have two types of predominant mindsets, of lenses that are telling us what is the level of conscious and subconscious alignment. If your conscious and your subconscious is aligned, you have a growth mindset, roughly speaking, because when things happen to you, you look at them through a positive light. You believe there's a silver lining behind the thing that happened to you. You automatically look for the best possible lesson that thing encapsulates for you. But when you have a fixed mindset and your subconscious and limbic system are basically full of anxiety or fear, of mismanaged emotions, then you freak out. Everything that happens to you is undeniable sign that you're not good enough. Your feedback, every feedback is just a threat, and you're not resilient, not adaptive. You cannot really evolve outside of your current identity, right? So in order to become something else, in order to be a different person, in order to scale your business, you must consistently align the conscious and the subconscious sides of the mind. There's just no other way. A lot of people talk about having a strong self-image. That's what they mean. It means that the subconscious actually is in line what they consciously want to achieve. Most entrepreneurs have like a dirty lens. They really have a lot of bullshit here, a lot of mismanaged emotions, negative thoughts, burnout, overwhelm. So it's very hard to see reality for what it is. Every time reality hits them, there's something that happens to them that doesn't go their way, this flawed filter creates the worst possible explanation for it. And this is what keeps you stuck. This is what prevents you from scaling to 7 figures effectively, right? Elite performers, they're not more intelligent. They just learn how to clean this filter. So the automatic thinking and reaction that comes through their minds is actually positive. They empower themselves to make the right choices. And as you might imagine, who would have told me that I could be an architect, an author, a consultant, a product director, an entrepreneur in a language that is not even mine? All of those things come from a very clear, conscious decision of reprogramming your mind, right? Okay, well, how do you reprogram your mind? This is the most important part of the lesson. First is understand, why is the subconscious operating the way it is operating? Why you have such a hard time getting yourself to do what you know you need to do? In essence, there's 3 basic problems with this. The first one is that subconscious doesn't like change. On top of not having a mind that is interpreting reality to your favor, when you have mental performance problems, in other words, when the subconscious is very much misaligned with the conscious, you have negative thoughts, you have self-doubt, you have anxiety, emotional mood swings. This one is huge. This is you suffer unnecessarily. You make a business journey just a whole complicated ordeal. The goal is to always be calm, collected, in control, positive, finding a silver lining, and knowing how to consistently move ahead. And this is done by reprogramming your subconscious. But let's first understand how the subconscious works and how to actually make it work for you. Subconscious has evolved in order to keep you safe, content, and tranquil. And it does this by not liking change, because it assumes that change is a threat, by creating energy efficient patterns, and leveraging feedback loops to keep yourself steady. So every time that you're trying to change your subconscious, you need to realize that the subconscious doesn't like change because it assumes change is a threat, something that departs from the ordinary that was programmed over decades is most likely a threat. So it's not going to accept the change you want to create without putting up a fight. And the fight also comes because the subconscious is also responsible for automatic functions that are energy efficient. What that means is that once the brain, the conscious side of the mind, has learned how to consciously do something, that becomes a subconscious pattern. Like, for instance, when you first learn to drive. Once you learn how to drive, now you're subconsciously able to drive pretty much any vehicle. Why? Because that energy efficient pattern was created in your mind to allow you to drive without overusing mental energy. Otherwise, it would be exhausting to have to learn and waste a lot of energy doing something that you could have learned the other way. And also leveraging feedback loops. And those feedback loops are the negative emotions, anxiety that we were discussing before. These are the negative feedback loops that typically the subconscious mind creates to make sure you realize that he doesn't like change because he doesn't believe change is a good thing. So how do you get out of this? Well, it's actually more simple than you think it is. It's basically making it like change and cut the feedback loops and recreate patterns. This is how you change your subconscious. First, you create a way of equating change with good instead of change with bad. And this is typically identity shifting. It's creating a new set of beliefs and behaviors that prove that the change you are embarking on is positive. Like when I went from being an architect to business development manager in China without knowing zero Chinese. Like I was subconsciously, I was very afraid of the experience, but I knew for a fact that the worst outcome that could get from it is signing zero deals and not learning Chinese, which I was totally okay with, right? So I just went for it and it worked. Now, I was way more afraid when I became a private equity investment director, like way more afraid because I was managing a lot of money. We're making investments between 1 and 10 million on real estate assets. And even though I was not making the final decision, I was the guy that was bringing the final decision to the investment committee, I still, it was a lot of money. So I had to work through these subconscious patterns of fear and anxiety and negativity in order to liberate myself and remain functional as an investment director. Same with when I decided to become an entrepreneur. I realized that if I was scared shitless of starting a business, I will never do it. And if I paid attention to the mind every time it told me that you were not good enough in English to create content, whatever, all of those thoughts I had them back then, I would never amount to anything. So you build a new identity, you recreate your patterns so that you consciously create a better version. You consciously create a better version of your habits. And finally, you cut the feedback loops through mental mastery. You learn to eliminate negative thoughts and emotions at the root. This is how you do it. So how do you specifically put this in action? How you make it super actionable for you? Let's get it. Now, if you're enjoying the video, like it so your feed improves and I know that this is something you're interested in. And of course, if there's any doubt whatsoever, put in the comments below. I reply to every comment. I want to know exactly how can I best help you, right? So the subconscious is something you can reprogram, but how? What does that even mean? How do you actually do it? Well, it's very, very simple if you think about it. First, create new identity. This is very important. Understand who you want to become. Understand what is an elite version of yourself in that new role look like. Find and model best behaviors. Let's say that you want to become the best investor that could ever live. Study Warren Buffett. Model what Warren Buffett would do. For instance, for me, I had a very good boss at Deloitte. I really enjoyed learning from him, even though I left Deloitte. And to me, I was modeling his behaviors. I have seen in negotiations with big funds, and I just knew what excellence looked like. So I model him. I model my old boss. So create that new identity. Be very clear about the beliefs and behaviors that are needed. Okay? Cool. Then step 2, start small. This is very important. Avoid the subconscious to understand that the new behaviors are a threat to your being. And you do this by starting very small. What is the single less important kind of step that you can take today to build your new identity? This is where you start. Like in my case, for instance, will be when I was in charge of doing all of those analysis for real estate that I've never really done before. I did all of my research, like how does an investment banker and investment director think? Courses on this, finance courses, market research courses, all sorts of things that I could do in order to build that new identity, conscientiously build that new identity. So start small, very, very important. Then 3, consistency. Crucial. The subconscious learns by repetition. The more you do something, the more automatic that pattern becomes. The more ingrained in your way of being it eventually becomes. So it's very important that you're consistent, that you know how to do the same thing time and time again in order to convince yourself that what you're doing is an undeniable proof that you are changing in a positive manner for the better. Then 4, get feedback. So this one is huge. Remember that elite performers and those with a growth mindset love feedback. because it is a way of becoming better very fast. It is a way of reframing what is not going well in order to become better over time. So the more feedback you get on your new things that you're trying, like for instance, when I was at the fund, this feedback was meeting with my investment committee, right? I not only did I meet with them, but I also called them during the week, every member of the committee, to understand how they thought, how to look at operations, to leverage their knowledge, to learn from them, to get feedback on my decisions, to get feedback on how I was framing investments, so that I could really evolve very quickly into the real estate director they needed to see performing at the investment committee. At the beginning, I wasn't good, but within 3 to 6 months, dude, I was very, very good. Why? Because I consistently did the right things and sought feedback to improve. And then the final step is train the mind, and that is through affirmations the right way and visualization. Affirmations they're built on the self-affirmation theory, which is a proven psychological theory that in essence says that when we affirm something that are true to us, that we can prove consciously that are true, we tend to reinforce that behavior. So for instance, if you're broke and you say, I'm rich, that is not going to work because you're not rich, you're still broke. But if you say, I am a fantastic investment director, and then I can find an instance in which that was the case, maybe some feedback at an investment committee, maybe a comment from my boss, maybe a comment from one of the clients, one of the developers that we're lending money to, doesn't matter what it was. If I could find a specific proof that was true, that automatically will help me solidify that new identity. But you gotta be based on reality. Reality is the only firm ground to step on. We cannot just go around affirming stuff that is not true. Even if it's minuscule, even if it's a very small part of what you believe you need to be in order to really win, it is still good. If you do something the right way, that is good enough to build an affirmation. And then the visualization is very much linked to the new identity. You visualize in order to see in your mind a picture perfect of the desired reality, of the identity, of the thing you're working towards, or what excellence looks like, or what is the business, the life, the friendships that you're building. That is a core element of all elite performers. Most of the game is played in the mind, it's not played in the field. So visualization helps with creating a new identity that your subconscious is able to assume as true. And I remember this is true at all levels. I still remember when I went to visit the first interview I did to a very famous architect, Ricardo Mofil, I think it was. And that I was scared shitless because this guy had 50-year permit. He was so knowledgeable that she could ask at any moment, any question that I wasn't ready to either interpret or really frame it the right way for the interview. So I studied his every single piece of architecture that he has ever done, and I visualized myself coming with incredible questions, and also as trying to see what answers would he give me, and how could I ask a follow-up question that was even better. And this created a fantastic interview for the Reprogram magazine that I was working for. So this is what you need to scale to 7 figures. This is what you need to really win in business, right? Marketing is good. Learning marketing and sales is what's going to scale your business, but it's really the ability to perform, the ability to remain consistent every single day, to never self-sabotage, to not let the mind get the best of you. The more you align conscious and subconscious, prefrontal cortex and limbic system, the faster your results. And this is a proven protocol that we give our clients. Of course, there's a lot of nuance to this, but I cannot go as deep as I would go with my clients out of respect for them. But this is how you do it. Understand exactly what are the core elements, core constituents of your new identity. Is start creating small behaviors and you consistently perform them. You seek feedback to improve upon them. And then eventually you also train the mind through affirmations and visualization and other techniques to self-hypnosis in order to fully integrate conscious and subconscious. The more you do this, the better your mindset will be. And at some point, you will have what I call, and my clients joke about it, but it's infinite comfort zone. I remember a friend of mine telling me, dude, but you have like an infinite comfort zone. Like, why would you go to China without knowing a single word in Chinese? Why would you work for a Chinese company that had no foreigners whatsoever? I couldn't use English. Why would you write in magazines? Why would you do all those things? Well, because it's fun. I thought it was fun, and I just realized that I didn't want to be an architect. So I had to test a lot of stuff. But never in a single minute did I let my subconscious believe that I was not ready for it. To the point that at some point, I coined the term infinite comfort zone. It doesn't matter what life throws at you, you're always going to win. And that is a core constituent of mental performance and any performance really at a whole. And this is what I believe is the number one thing you have to do in order to win in business. So if this was good, like, subscribe, and hit the bell, and see you in the next video.